Hello, I'm Dr. Brown. I've been at the Texas Wesleyan University Psychology Department since 2006. I am a parent of two children, a son who is 25 at the moment and a daughter who is 20 at the moment. So I have lived through this parenting styles conversation is not just academic. I've lived through it. And my colleague.
Hi, I'm Dr. Coursey. I've been at Texas Wesleyan since 2023, and I have one daughter. She's 3, so I am living it now, just at the beginning.
All right, so first, before we kind of talk about our parenting style and our thoughts on it, we should probably mention very briefly about the classic research in parenting styles. The research was done by a woman named Diana Baumrind. And she had a very interesting background because she was a Jewish woman that grew up in a house with no sons, and so she was given the special privileged status that a son would normally have. So her childhood, right from the beginning, kind of influenced her thoughts. And in her research on parenting styles, Diana Baumrind identified these 4 different styles of parenting that really differed based on these 2 factors. That is, some parents are very low in what they demand of their children, and some are very high in what they demand of their children. And meanwhile, some parents don't really support, or in different versions I've seen this to be like warmth. Some are very less warm or more cold or indifferent, and some are more warm. And it creates these 4 parenting styles of uninvolved, permissive, authoritarian, and authoritative. And most research in parenting styles has begun with this as the basis. But more modern work has been changed a little bit, Dr. Coursey.
Just modern trends tend to emphasize what's sometimes called positive parenting, sometimes called gentle parenting, and it's tricky because the techniques don't fit with any single one of those types. It's sort of a combination. One thing for sure is that it's really low on authoritarian. So the big emphasis is on warmth and that kind of positive emotional relationship. But there's some controversy when it comes to the amount of control that you should have with positive parenting or gentle parenting. Now, from just trying to follow the style, and particularly from like a research perspective, one of the difficult things is that there's not an agreed upon list of how you carry this out. So if you look different websites, different books, everything's going to tell you something different. So there's not one single accepted definition for what is positive parenting or what is gentle parenting. And there's a lot of disagreement, and there's not a lot of research as of yet that focuses on specifically gentle parenting or specifically positive parenting. Instead, they'll kind of take that 4-factor approach where maybe they're saying authoritative, which is similar to positive parenting but not exact.
Okay.
My preferred style. My preferred style would be probably that authoritative style. The thing with authoritative is that it emphasizes the warmth, but still has the control, right? That you're setting boundaries for children, that you have limits, and that there is some type of negative consequences if the child goes outside of those limits. With the gentle parenting, it can be really difficult to maintain. I think if you're taking a very strong approach to gentle parenting because the emphasis is like really low on control. That, for instance, one of the suggestions is you shouldn't have any type of punishment for your kid, really. Some argue within the gentle parenting realm that you shouldn't even put your child in timeout. Which the APA has come out and said, we are in support of timeout. Everything argues that timeout is an appropriate consequence for children who are being defiant. But the gentle parenting kind of philosophy is that you should always be positive, and that rather than negative consequences, instead you should catch your child doing what's right and reward them for that. And then if you do that enough, the negative behaviors will decrease over time, which from a behaviorist perspective.
Yes, I was thinking B.F. Skinner came back and gave you that piece of advice.
Yes, and so that is a big element of the gentle parenting. But some of the concerns is that if you have a defiant child or a strong-willed child, if your child is pushing those limits or not, not listening to what you're saying, then appropriate consequences are necessary. And there's been some discussion about how tough gentle parenting can be on the parent because the expectation is that you are constantly modeling this positive emotion, and that means emotion regulating yourself.
Sounds cognitively draining.
Constantly, and there's been a little bit of survey data suggesting that some of the gentle parents, those who are saying I'm a gentle parent, are reporting burnout.
I believe that, yeah.
At high rates, and some who are saying, especially if you have strong-willed children, that by the end of the day you're just exhausted because you're having to try to negotiate constantly with a 3-year-old.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
And
All
right. It can be a little tricky.
Okay. Well, my preferred style is, going back to Baumann's, the research has said in Baumann's work that children raised with an authoritative parenting style tend to have the most positive outcomes. They tend to succeed in school. They tend to have the positive aspects of social development as defined by Erik Erikson. And I believe in the authoritative style myself because to me, it reflects well on my belief in independence. That I was taught from an early age to be independent and strong. I was modeled by my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother. They taught me from the beginning about strength and how to be self-sufficient, which is a very American thing. I want to be very careful that this parenting style conversation outside of America would be taken a 360. But in America, it is, good for a child to be independent. I mean, again, that's in Erik Erikson's theory, right, to be independent. And I think the authoritative style, be careful, I'm not an authoritarian. The authoritative style lends itself well because I tried to set some high expectations for my children. When a child comes to you and says, I can't do it, that's usually a cue that means they don't want to do it. And so with an authoritative style, you're kind of, and this is almost the way I approach my teaching as well, is that my job as a parent and as a teacher is to identify what the child or student is capable of and kind of get them to meet what they are capable of, rather than kind of quitting when it is more comfortable. What is challenging about my style? The authoritative style, I mean any style to be honest, is challenging because you're not doing this game alone. That your parenting is a direct reflection of the children that you have. And I can't quite remember the terrible threes anymore. That was a long time ago. But I do remember the teenage boy. The boy who, perfectly sweet little boy who turned into a giant, and this was 5 years of grunting in response to everything, and just upset if you even dared to talk to him. And so as much as I wanted to be this authoritative parent and really carry through this teaching style, I'm mixing the two up, parenting style, it didn't necessarily work, and at times I had to become the authoritarian. Son, you will do it because I said so. Because it is my house and you're not paying rent, you will get this job done. So I want to have a nice conversation back and forth, and we'll talk about it. But sometimes the kids won't let you have it. So how have you been finding being a positive parent besides emotionally exhausting?
Yeah, I think kind of the same point that you made, that you're not the only person in this equation. So my daughter is pretty strong-willed. She's very bold. And one thing that I think is difficult is that I want to encourage that she has all of these traits that I wish I had. She's very social and extroverted and bold, and I'm not saying that those are bad things, but it makes it difficult to modify or control her behavior. And I think the interaction of personality styles, that I tend to be a little more of a passive person, and that can be difficult, right? Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm a match for this 3-year-old. And so these like more gentle techniques, I definitely like the warmth component, right? And the positive emotion, but sometimes these more gentle influence techniques matched against her personality, I have to be kind of more authoritarian sometimes. And sometimes I get frustrated and I yell at her and I'm like, no! And she'll get really upset and she'll be crying. And then I have to explain to her, like, I tried the nice ask 5 separate times and you didn't listen, right? And so then now I have to be mean.
Yeah, you're definitely onto something there, that children, when we're too young, I remember you can't use authoritative parenting. Some of the behaviors involved in authoritative parenting would be to explain to your child about consequences and to why is this perhaps leading to a punishment versus a reinforcement or something. But if they're just not either willing or able yet, cognitively able to understand these conversations, then maybe you can't necessarily do what you prefer, right? Yeah. It's what emerges.
Yes.
Huh? So, how did my child respond to my style is a good question. And it turns out that they responded, generally speaking, pretty well. I set fairly high expectations for them. But what we find interesting is that society didn't necessarily allow me to do what I wanted to do. Now, I had high expectations, and I remember one particular case. My daughter was about 7, and we were at the doctor's office, and I had a big pile of forms to fill in, and I gave them to her. And I said, fill them in, Of course, there's going to be information in there you don't know, and then I'll finish them up when you're done, right? But I mean, she knows her address, and you know how many times you have to put your address on those forms? Like 15 times. So I'm like, she is perfectly capable of filling in name, address, birthday, blah, blah, blah. Then I would take it afterward. But the people in that office, almost, it was like I was abusing her or something. How dare you? You're asking her to write her own name on a form? What? Because I guess they're associating that with an adult response. But she's perfectly capable of doing it. Why not? Why wouldn't I ask her to do what she's capable of doing? And to me, that was positive parenting, but society did not agree with me.
Interesting. Yeah, the independence thing is kind of a unique question. I think now there's more of an emphasis on encouraging your children to do things for themselves and be independent. And I wonder, part of that could be, I am an older parent, which is more and more typical now. So my mom was 36 when she had me, but at that time that was very unusual. Now it's a lot more common. So we had Jane when we were older, but also all of our friends had kids. They're having kids right now too. But it's interesting. I see a difference when I go to like the park, where I see kids playing on the equipment, and I see all of the older parents about my age who are standing right underneath like this, right?
Waiting
and,
for
and encouraging, and like, you can do it, okay, but also doing a lot of helping, right? A lot of pushing and guiding.
Yep.
And then I see all of the like young 20-something parents. They're over on the side, on the benches.
On their cell phone?
On their phone, or talking to each other. That have no idea what their kids are even doing. Their kids could be falling off. And like, it's just interesting to see this.
Generational almost.
Yes. And so I have tried to, because I noticed that tendency that I want to go and help her with everything. I want to make sure that she's okay. And then I have to like consciously think like, okay, no, she can do this. You need to let her do things for herself. You need to let her figure it out. Don't try to do everything for her. But that's something that I have to like consciously make myself do, like consciously. And that, how does your kid respond? She is very independent. And so she definitely helps with that, because she'll be like, no, I do it myself.
It sounds like her personality is kind of coming forth by accident.
And so she will want it to be her job, right?
Well, after all of these years of parenting styles that have had to be flexible and change and move, I think the outcomes have been fairly positive, because both of my children, well, they're moved out of the house, okay? So that's a pretty positive outcome, I guess. And they both, they both graduated college at this point, and they're both currently in their master's programs. So I don't know if that's hey, I'll take credits because of my parenting style, but who knows what it was, but that is at least a sample size of 2, all right?
For me, I don't know yet. You'll have to check back in 10, 15 years or so, then we'll see.
All right, very good.